السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to another session of Ramadan Islamic Perspective, where we answer the questions regarding fasting, Taraweeh, Zakah, and Umrah. So everything regarding the month of Ramadan, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us in giving proper answers, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the benefit from this knowledge. We seek aid in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and start with the first question for today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dealing with a member who is not fasting. As a mother, if my son who is not fasting asks me to cook for him, how should I deal with the situation? Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So basically, this woman is asking about preparing food for a person who is not fasting. Can a person who is not fasting, can a person who is fasting, or a person who is a Muslim and applying Islam, aid another person in eating and drinking during the day of Ramadan? So in this case, we want to ask the question, which is it permissible for your son to break his fast? So is your son ill, or is your son a traveler? If he was a traveler, or if he was ill and it was permissible for him to break his fast, or a girl who is in her menses, a woman in her menses, then in this case it's permissible for them to eat and drink without any issues. So preparing food for them is a good deed. And you preparing the food has nothing to do with your fasting. Okay, you're doing good deed. You're just like a cook who cooks the food. There's no issues with this if he knows that he's not feeding a person who's not supposed to eat at this time. Which brings us to the other matter. If your son did not want to abide by the rulings of Islam, let's say for example a Muslim who does not want to eat and drink, a Muslim who wants to eat and drink, he wants to break his fast, he does not want to fast Ramadan. Okay, in this case, is it permissible for him to cook for him food? Say he's my son, he's hungry, I want to cook food for him. In this case, you're aiding him in this prohibition, because a Muslim should not aid anyone in disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a sin. We do not aid another person in disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What we do is the opposite. We aid our brothers and our sisters in obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should never aid anyone in disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this case, if a mother cooks the food for her son who does not want to fast, and he did not have a proper excuse to break his fast in the first place, so she's aiding him in this prohibition. So it's not permissible for your sister to cook food for him and to aid him in this. Of course you cannot force him to fast. So if this is the case, say, look, I care about you and I want what is best for you in this world and the hereafter, but I'm not going to cook for you food because in this I'm aiding you to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not because I hate you. It's not because you're not my son. The opposite is true. I love you so much and you are my son. And I care about you and I want what is best for you in this world and hereafter. And I'm giving you this advice. Obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Make the best of this world. This is an opportunity for you. Okay? And this world, obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and following the Quran and Sunnah, is the way to live a happy and fulfilling life in this world, and it's also the only path to attaining, a wonderful, fulfilling life in the hereafter, and to protect ourselves from the eternal punishment, of hellfire. There is no other way other than acting upon the Quran and Sunnah for us. So giving him advice, giving him da'wah with wisdom. Okay, being patient in doing your obligation in terms of giving him da'wah. Sometimes it might be difficult. Sometimes you might hear words that might, harm your feelings, or you might feel some emotional harm. And this, you're rewarded for this. And this is definitely part of acting good. So, regarding answering your question, yes, it's not permissible for you to help him in eating and drinking during the day. If he asks for food after sunset, then it's permissible. Otherwise, it is considered haram. Wallahu a'lam. So what if somebody said, what if he was a non-Muslim? What if he was a non-Muslim? Is the ruling the same? Wallahu a'lam, the ruling is the same. Wallahu a'lam, the ruling is the same. I'll see if he wants to eat and drink, he should find a way to eat and drink by himself. In terms of you call him to Islam. You call him to Islam and say, okay, but I cannot prepare food for you to eat at this time. I cannot prepare food for you to eat at this time. Because the commands of Islam, like fasting, all this is obligated on both, on everyone. Wallahu alam. This is what the jurists say anyway. طيب, we move on to our next question. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have a lot of jewelry, which is very expensive, consisting of pearl, diamonds, and rubies. How do I calculate the zakah for it? طيب, alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. First of all, we say jazakillah khairan for being cautious and wanting to seek the approval of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by applying every single command of Islam. So alhamdulillah, Allah Azza wa Jal blessed you with money and you have a lot of jewelry and you want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're worried that there's a right in this jewelry that you're not giving. And this is how a Muslim should be. Should we always be asking about the things that we need in our lives and asking about the things that we have doubts in. And you just did not say, I assume that there's no rulings and that's it. No, you wanted to ask, you wanted to make sure. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for being cautious. Now, regarding this, the question, pearls, diamonds, and rubies, regardless of how expensive they were, even if they were more expensive than gold, in some cases, this does not mean that they are zakatable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it specific that zakah is for gold and silver, and cash is considered also zakatable. But these metals, they are not zakatable. They are not zakatable unless a person had inventory. So he's selling this. So he's selling pearls, he's selling diamonds, he's selling rubies. In this case, it's zakatable. Not because they are pearls or diamonds or rubies. They are zakatable because they are inventory set for sale. Zakatu urud al-tijara. But if it was that a person, just like you mentioned, jewelry that you wear, it's definitely not zakatable, and this is not a matter of khilaf. But if it was something that you're selling, so you're selling jewelry consisting of pearls, diamonds, and rubies, in this case it is zakatable because it is part of inventory that is set for sale. So sister, regarding your question, this jewelry, the pearl itself, the diamonds, the rubies, it's not zakatable. But make sure that you're not missing out on or not including the gold. If it was gold with diamonds or gold with rubies, the gold is zakatable. So if you try your best to estimate the gold which is separate from the rubies, diamonds, and pearls, and how much does it weigh, and you add it to the other gold. Oh, sorry. This is for jewelry that is for personal use. If it was jewelry for personal use, even if it was gold and silver, the opinion that I choose is the opinion of the majority that it is not zakatable. Okay, so jewelry in general, if it was set for personal use, it's not zakatable. But pearls, diamonds, and rubies, there is no khilaf that this in itself is not zakatable. Wallahu alam. طيب, move on to our next question. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have bleeding gums and sometimes find the taste of blood in my throat. Does that affect my fasting? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala nabihil ameen. So we know that fasting, we abstain from food and drink from dawn all the way to sunset, and we make sure that we do not swallow anything other than we do not eat or we do not swallow anything that enters the throat. So here, of course, the person is asking about bleeding of the lips and bleeding of the gums. So he's asking about bleeding of the gums. Now, the blood that you have in your gums, are you able to control it? So are you able to spit it out or to treat it or to wash your mouth so that it dries out, the bleeding stops? If you're able to do this, and it's better for you to do this. Now, if blood entered without you being careless, it does not affect your ruling. So you're not aware of this bleeding, you do not see it. But suddenly you find the taste of blood. If you're able to spit it out, you should do. But if you were not careless and you did not deliberately swallow blood, then it does not break your fast if it was without you able to control it. So if you're not able to control it, you're just, sitting, and then you find that blood is entering without you being aware or conscious of. So in this case, it does not break your fast. Same thing with the person who is performing wudu, washing his mouth, then, subhanAllah, without him being aware, some drops entered the throat. He did not do it deliberately. He was not careless. It's something that just happened. In this case, also, a person's fasting is secured, and he does not need to make up that fasting. Wallahu alam. طيب, let's move on to our next question. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Any advice for sisters? A lot of the day of Ramadan is spent taking care of the house and iftar. How do you find balance? طيب. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. A Muslim in Ramadan wants to make the best of the opportunities, like making the best of fasting and making the best of the night in terms of doing qiyam and some worship. But at the same time, he wants to give everyone their rights, because of worship, for example, is being dutiful towards the parents. Of worship, for example, is taking care of the husband taking care of the wife and children, taking care of your children and their needs. This is also a worship. A person cannot isolate himself with the excuse that, I'm preoccupied with worship. All of these actions are worship. طيب. So, what you do in terms of taking care of the house, this is part of your obligations, because if you do not do it, no one else will do it, and this is what keeps the family together in terms of taking care of something while the other members are taking care of other things. So this is considered a worship, and you're rewarded for this. And regarding cooking, think about this. You're cooking and preparing the food for everyone. So it's like you gave everyone the opportunity to engage in worship, and you have taken care of this problem. So you said to yourself, I'm going to cook, I'm going to prepare everything they need for iftar, so that they do not worry about iftar and they are preoccupied with worship. This intention, you get the reward of their worship, because if it wasn't for you cooking, they could have been preoccupied, by fixing the food. And having the most important thing, sisters, is to have the proper intention. It's not just, I'm doing this and I'm preparing the food because I need to do it. No, why do you need to do it? So you have to think about the intentions. I'm doing this so that I can strengthen them, so that they are not preoccupied with, with making the food. I'm going to do this so that they are preoccupied with khair. If you have this intention, you're going to get their reward, their worship that they're doing. Not only this, you intend, for example, that they break their fast on food that you prepared. So the Messenger Muhammad said, whoever gives food to a person who's fasting to break his fast, he's going to get the same reward of his fasting. أو كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So here you're going to get the reward of their fasting. You intend this also. You intend, for example, that this food that you're preparing, you're going to put some hours in it, طيب, and this will strengthen them for qiyam. It will give them energy and preserve their strength, and having energy and preserve their strength for the next day, for fasting the next day. So all of these things can be intended, and you're going to be rewarded for every single thing that you intend. The Messenger Muhammad ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are but by intentions, and a person will only get وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَىٰ. And a person will only get what he intended. And a person will only get what he intended. So if you have all these intentions, then this will make, this action, which is a habit, cooking is a habit. But for you, when you cook with the intention of, making my family stronger, taking care of them, giving them iftar, giving them energy for worship, these intentions make the worship even more and more rewarding. This is one aspect. The other aspect is that after talking about this and after mentioning these points, we have to understand that our sister has to balance. We're not saying to leave Quran altogether. We're not saying to leave all voluntary worship. We're not saying do not do qiyam, do not pray sunnah, delay the prayer outside this time. We're not saying this. So preoccupy yourself with khair. Do as much dhikr recite Quran as much as possible. While cooking, the tongue should be used for the remembrance of Allah. The tongue should be used for the remembrance of Allah. Engaging in dhikr while preparing the food, for example. Whenever you have time, you can sit and just continue reading Quran. Also, times of worship. Delaying worship outside of its time, cooking is not an excuse. Or for example, delaying Asr all the way until the preferred time ends. This is haram. Okay? And cooking food, I don't know, can this be an excuse? I mean, you have all the time. You can pray at the start of the time of Asr, and then you're going to be preoccupied. I mean, nothing's going to go wrong in 15 minutes. Okay? So, this is how we do balance. You try your best to do your obligations towards the family, but you try your best also not to miss out on, for example, Qiyam and reciting some Quran. Qiyam, for example, the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ has said, "Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban, ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi." Whoever does Qiyam the whole month of Ramadan, he will get his sins expiated. Now, when we say Qiyam, qama Ramadan, it means Qiyam of every single night. So if every single night he has done some Qiyam, it will be written for him that he has done the Qiyam of Ramadan, and whoever does the Qiyam of Ramadan, he will get his sins expiated. So you do not want to neglect this point. So again, not doing any Qiyam, this is not an excuse. Being preoccupied with the house is not an excuse for you not to do any Qiyam. So the balance is key. You do your worships, tayyib, you do as much sunnahs, voluntary worship, at the same time you take care of your family, and subhanAllah, you get the best of both worlds. Wallahu alam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Will my rewards be less in fasting if I do not have suhoor? I am too tired. I barely wake up for Fajr and then get ready for work. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. So this person is asking about his fasting. Is the reward for his fasting less if he does not eat suhoor? Suhoor is a sunnah. So if you ate suhoor or if you left suhoor, the only thing that you have done is you missed a sunnah. But suhoor helps you in your fasting, and it helps you in being energetic during the day to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will continue inshallah the details of this question in our next session. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. جزاكم الله خيرا.